To have you guys here. What's up, Charles, Coach Chuck? How you doing? Virginia in the Philippines. Good morning to you. I wish I could afford these lashes. I've tried all kinds. Tina, the lashes, if you use the promo code WELCOME10, you will save 10%. But I'll find out. I'll see. I think I may have some. Because you've been awesome. I'll send you some if I can. I think I have some. But the lashes are cool because you can come on in. The lashes are cool because you can reuse them 35 times and 25 to 35 times. And then, of course, the applicator allows you to apply them in 5 seconds or less. But anyway, so enough with the lashes. Really, the curl apart's really, really cool too. Todd, good to see you. So our guest is here. I'm really, really excited. What's up? By the way, I heard what happened to your refrigerator, Rayanne. She went to go get your food because all your food got ruined. So that's customer service. Oh, by the way, we are live right now at the Element by Bloomington Hotel in Bloomington, Minnesota. This is Bloomington, Minnesota. Hi, how are you? Bloomington, Minnesota, and right next to the Mall of America, right next to downtown, like 15 minutes away from downtown. Absolutely love this hotel. And as you just said, or as I just said, Rayanne's refrigerator somehow went nuts, blame GE, but now the hotel manager is out buying her food. So that was kind of cool. That's above and beyond. That's my kind of hotel. Anyway, so good to see you guys. Guess what? Our guest is here. Ladies and gentlemen, you've seen her in the chat. You may have never seen her in person, ever. Some of you have, some of you haven't. Maybe none of you have. I just saw her in person for the very first time out of the corner of my eye. Ladies and gentlemen, Tiffany Jacobson. How you doing? Have a seat. Now you get to see what I see when I'm doing this every day. Yes. Welcome to Gratitude Unfiltered. Thank you. Are you social distancing? Because we completely just run that. No. We just shook hands, and we're like 6 inches from each other, not 6 feet. Yeah. So, welcome to Gratitude Unfiltered. How are you?
Good. I'm glad I'm here.
So did the GPS just not take you to the right place?
Yeah, it brought me to 2 different places.
Which places?
The same address you gave me, but 2 different places. And then I asked the lady, and she's like, well, just go to the Mall of America, and you'll probably find it. I'm like, I'm just going to go to the Mall of America, because I was way across town, like 9 minutes out. So.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Well, and I'm not good at even if I was from here, you wouldn't want my directions anyway, because you would end up in like Toronto or something like that. So, but thank you for coming here. It was so funny because I was thinking about like, how am I going to set up this room today? And I was like, nah, I'll just do this. I like this screen here. So I'm glad you're here. What are you grateful for today?
Just the fact of having sense of no direction, but God leads me to the right place. Because that's what happened today. I was like,
I like that.
The Holy Spirit like literally had to lead me here because the GPS, it wasn't working. The lady didn't know where I was going. I'm like, okay, Holy Spirit, you're going to have to lead. So, yeah.
I've never actually asked the Holy Spirit for directions, like GPS directions before. Yeah. But I may try that next time.
It's awesome.
It's better than Waze.
It is.
Well, I'm grateful that you're here. And like a lot of you guys have seen her in the chat during the show. And again, maybe you know her, but I was just so blown away by, seeing your comments. I guess I don't have to talk about you in third person. You're right here. So I was so blown away, and I was like, okay, I got to have you on. So you've had an interesting story.
Yeah.
I'm going to just kind of let you like start wherever you feel like starting, because I don't know anything about you.
Right.
At all.
Right.
I just felt in my spirit that you needed to come on here. So I want you to have the floor. Like, just share your heart.
Okay. My story did not begin good. Both my parents. Actually, it kind of starts off, my grandpa was a pastor and my dad was in the Navy. So after he left the Navy, he kind of became the black sheep, was into really fast cars, cocaine, and women. And my dad liked to traffic cocaine and drive fast cars. And he was a pastor's child, so he was definitely kind of shunned out of the family.
Oh, so his father knew about it.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And he was married with 3 kids, and my mom was the nanny, and that's how I was created. So
Married with 3 kids. Your mom was
pastor's family. Yeah.
Yeah, pastors' kids always end up pretty interesting, or at least in my experience. There's been very few that I've seen come out somewhat normal. What do you think that is? Why do you think that is?
I don't know. Like even growing up beyond the ugliness of like getting abused, I had to go to a private Christian school, but it was very religious. It was like kind of like shoved down your throat. It wasn't like a relationship. It was like boom, 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 boom. And
So it was rules. It was like
was,
using the Bible as like a rule book to beat
yeah.
you over the head with.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I saw that in my dad's family. Very much so, except for my grandpa. My grandpa actually, when he was alive, he moved here straight from Denmark to Iowa. So he was a Danish Lutheran pastor. So I'm like straight Danish Swedish because my grandma was Swedish. So, and he was like the nice one of the family. But my grandma, I think, was the one that was really hard on my dad. I saw it when I was at my dad's funeral. My grandpa always used to call me his little Priscilla. Like now that I'm older, Priscilla was a woman of God in the Bible, and her and Aquila like went into the danger zones together, like for evangelizing. So that's pretty cool. I'm like, I'm receiving that now. I'm like, I'll have it in my quota someday.
So I want you to talk about what that was like growing up in like seeing your father. I mean, were you old enough to see the trafficking of cocaine go on?
Oh yeah. I remember the bricks. Of course, coming out of the Navy, he was trained IT. So it was back in the 80s when the computers were, thick, like boxes.
The size of that TV back there, basically?
Correct. So, I mean, he had his home-based business. So we had this nice house, and it was in the country. We had a, creek in our backyard. It was very nice. So everything looked so perfect on the outside. I saw the trafficking of the drugs. I remember my dad used to buy like Ferraris and Alfa Romeos off of eBay back then. I don't know if eBay still exists, but
yeah, what happened? I think eBay is gone now.
I think eBay is gone.
Who buys a Lamborghini on eBay?
Somebody that's trafficking drugs through it, possibly.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I remember when I was a little girl, I didn't even know what Alfa Romeo was. I thought it was a pasta. So when he said he brought Alfa Romeo home, I'm like, oh, awesome. So I didn't know it was a little spider, but it was like, you could see, because we lived in a small town in Wisconsin. So it was just ridiculous. It's like my dad's an IT, $600,000 a year. You can't afford a Ferrari Alphas and the other cars he had in the other garages and on his friend's property. So yeah, that
was he buying all of those cars just to collect things, or was he using it to launder money? Or can you launder money with cars?
You can launder money with cars, like especially if you're like the Ferrari he got from Germany, and I remember hearing him yell about somebody ripping him off for like 10 grand or something. So,
right.
Yeah.
So as a kid, you're seeing this, like what is it when you're seeing, so if I knew when I was a kid or when I was a child, and if I remember the rumor that my father was in the mafia, and I kind of looked at that like, this is awesome. Like, oh, yeah, he's a gangster. But I read biographies on Al Capone. Like I was really into Scarface, and like those are the things that I was drawn to. Right. So I would have thought that was cool at that age. Right. For you, what was that like?
It was a living nightmare. I liked James Bond because I remember the good memories from my dad was watching James Bond movies. So he was trying to be the modern day James Bond, I think. But
with cocaine.
And fast cars. And so I don't know. It was a nightmare for me because before I even started living with my dad, my dad and my mom met. They obviously had an affair and had me. They were both very high on cocaine. And so Grandpa's son had to get married to the woman he had an affair with to make it look good. And they were very active in partying, cocaine. And so this is where it gets hard. So the people that they partied with, they would literally traffic me to the people they partied with.
So when these parties were going on, they were selling you to other people at the parties.
Yeah.
Can you take yourself back to that moment and remember what that felt like? Were you scared, confused? Did you have to get high yourself? What was that like?
I remember little bits and pieces of my mom like handing me drugs. I remember bits and pieces of like drinking, and I've done lots of EMDR, so I remember exactly how I felt. I felt like I wasn't protected. I just felt like, what is going on? This is, so it was like these two people that were supposed to protect me are not protecting me, and bad things are happening, and they were violating me themselves. So that was the message I had like at the beginning. And I know I'm getting healed because I'm not bawling my eyes out. I couldn't have done that like even 4 weeks ago, but I'm doing like really hardcore EMDR.
Yeah, I remember when I reached out and I asked you if you would come on Gratitude Unfiltered, you were like, I need to pray about this.
Yeah.
You weren't ready. And as I said yesterday with, Coach Chuck being on the show and it being kind of a new thing for him to share his story, and then technology got in the way, or his testimony anyway. And it takes courage to do that. And, sometimes, after you give your life to Christ and you can be all in, it doesn't mean that you're healed right away. It's a journey, it's a process. And so sometimes sharing your testimony, the devil doesn't want that. Because you releasing this and you sharing this, you said that you were having spiritual attacks, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like leading up to this?
Yeah.
Because the devil didn't want this truth to get out.
No.
And here you are doing it.
No, I like to stomp them out.
God bless you for that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you're going through this. This may sound insane, but it's like, it's one thing to traffic you to people at the party.
Right.
That's pretty screwed up.
Right.
But then they're taking advantage of you also.
Yeah.
Where did you go? Was there any safe place for you at that age?
I don't think so. I think like my natural instincts always, like when I want peace, I like go to the bathtub. So I'm assuming that's where I used to hide, because that's where I feel peace. Like even when I lived with my dads, we had a creek in our backyard. So like outdoors is like literally my peace. That's where I go when I'm completely stressed. So I know that much. But when after my dad had left my mom, she was partying, still trafficking me. And she got so strung out on the cocaine that she forgot she had a child. And there was somebody there that lived next door, said, all these people used to come in and out of this house. Nobody's been there for 3 weeks. And I just heard a baby cry. That would be me. And so that's how I know God was with me. And so she called the police, and they found me in a corner with my legs crossed, of course, because I'm assuming that's the position that, like, being protected after being violated. My legs were actually stuck that way. So when I went to my dad's, my step-grandma had to teach me how to walk at age 4.
Wait a second. How old were you when this was happening?
I was little. I was like 2-3 years old. To 4. And so after they found me, my dad had already remarried, and he met my stepmom in rehab. We have addiction in our family, obviously. He met my stepmom in rehab, and so he was remarried. She had 2 children. He adopted her 2 children. Of course, he still had lots of money. they had nothing. And so I was a private Christian school. I was in college. The nightmare still continued because as my dad was trafficking, there was a lot of abuse. My stepmom used to bash my head in every day. I mean, I was going to private Christian school. I was in spelling bee. I was in cheerleading. I was in track. We were sat in front row. I mean, everything looked perfect on the outside, but I was getting beat every day until I was in 8th grade, as my dad was still doing his business.
So you, at that time, I want to go back to something, because this part of what you're saying sounds relatively familiar.
Yeah.
By then, did you have a special friend mentally, like the person that would kind of take over and protect you? Like another, maybe an entity, as you would recognize it as now?
Right. Yeah.
So you were able to kind of go hide in the back of your head. Like when you were being hurt, you found a safe place maybe in the back of your mind to go to. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I recognize that. I can relate to that. I understand that. So you got pretty good at wearing a mask and being able to hide. So you could show up at the cheerleading function. You could show up, at school, put on the face of like, yay, I'm happy and this is great. And yay, that was you. Yes?
Yeah.
How long were you able to keep up that act before you snapped?
Till I was in 8th grade. I mean, even like as a little girl, I got held back in kindergarten because I was literally hiding under my teacher's desk, and I wouldn't come out because I was so afraid of people. And like I remember even in 1st grade, a teacher's like, I would always be like sitting away from everybody. I never fit in, no matter even if I was track or cheerleader. I never fit in. But I remember the teacher, she's like, well, do you want a friend? And then she'd like introduce me to people. And it's just, I was always the misfit outcast, kind of like my dad maybe, but I never fit in anywhere. I still don't. And I've gotten to the age where I don't care anymore. So
that's a good thing.
Yeah. You kind of reach that point of your life.
So I don't know if you want to share this or not, and I don't want to create a trigger for you or anyone that's watching, but what were some of the ways that you learned to escape? Because you were dealing with the abuse, physical, sexual, you're seeing drugs everywhere, you're already learning how to pretend and wear the mask. Mm-hmm. What were some of the, from my understanding, now I don't know, I can only speak from a male point of view here, but correct me if I'm wrong. But even though you were able to hide and you put those masks on, there's still like an urge, like you need to like come out of your body. Like there's something that needed to be released at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So how did you release?
I don't think I like released until like after I got older because of the beatings. My body literally trained itself to not cry, not show any emotion. Like I stuffed it all in. And even as of recently, like for me, boxing is my release. Like I like boxing. Like that's my release because my friends always tell me, they're like, I'm scared to see you angry, Tiffany, because I've never seen you angry. I'm like, that's what weight bags are for. So, because I haven't released it. I've just suppressed all of this anger and inside. I mean, I've released it with tears, but I mean, really releasing for me was just going to the river. Like that was my spot. Like I didn't cry because my body trained itself not to cry, no matter how painful it was. I just didn't cry. I didn't, because it was like, if I even cried, I would get beat harder. So I'm just like, okay, if I don't cry, I won't get beat harder. So I would just try and like, just hold everything together. Cause your body can condition itself to do that. Soldiers do it,
Yeah. Sure.
But yeah, I mean, it's pretty sad. I had to learn at a young age to do that.
So you learned this at a young age and you're going to high school, like, were you seeking, even though you said you didn't fit in, were you trying to fit in on your own?
I didn't even get a chance to go to high school because by the time I went to high school was the time that my stepmom finally got busted for beating me and bashing my head in with her sons until I had a blackout. And so they put me in a foster home. And this is where my mom comes back into the picture. They put me in a foster home. My mom finds out my dad makes over 600 G's a year, which is a lot back in the 80s.
Sure.
And of course, I was an addict. That's a lot of money to go party, so she.
So you got into drugs too?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, when that start?
I like when I was living with my mom. Because she took me out of the safe place, the foster home. And she's like, well, my daughter's in a foster home, like she cared, And so she took me out of that foster home and she brought me back to her chaos, remarried, 2 kids, drugs and alcohol everywhere. She had parties, and then I was getting reviolated all over again. And
wow.
And every time she got drunk, she reminded me what a mistake I was. And she told me that she wanted to abort me. And it was just, and then I tried telling her about the violations, and she called me a slut on a daily basis. She didn't believe me. And then, of course, and at that time she was in Minnesota. So that's where I came into Minnesota, because I was a Scotty girl, and now in Minnesota because my mom lives here. And so after they found out that she was doing drugs, she wasn't a good mother, the county made me get emancipated from her when I was 15, which means I have no parents. So at age 15, I tried to overdose. I tried to find every pill in my mom's house. I tried to take it. And so I ended up at the Rochester General 2nd West Mental Health for suicide. And then they placed me in different state hospitals. And then when you're 15, you don't have anybody anymore. So I ended up on the streets. And that's when the big bricks of drugs came into my life, because I was on the streets, and that's where you had to be a chameleon, because when you're on the streets, you make bids on I was in Rochester, Minnesota. You make bids on Dorothy Day House just for a bed, because you're living on the streets and you get a ticket so you can sleep that night. You have to wait in a line. And if you don't get a bed, you're on the streets and you're fending for yourself.
Minnesota.
In Minnesota.
It gets negative 40 degrees here.
Yeah.
On the streets? Yeah. What are you doing to keep warm?
Curling up.
In what?
Finding a bench where there's like hardly any wind, or finding a parking ramp. I work with homeless youth, and that's just what we do, and it was really scary, because and that's when people gangs would come up to me, like, I know how you can make some money. How can you help me make some money? So that's how I got into drugs. There was Rochester, like I said, bricks. You put the bricks in the cars, those big old semi-trailers that they, ship to Chicago. They were putting that in the cars. And so they were like, there was always, well, you have a place to stay. You have a place to stay, but you get high and we're going to use you for there.
Did you care about, and at this point, because you've got a lot of years into being
thrown away?
Yeah, were you still feeling like you were being used? Did you care at that point?
I didn't care. I just wanted to die. I prayed every day, Lord, just please let me die. In fact, I tried taking so many drugs that a police officer found me on the road, and he called 911. They made me drink 3 cups of liquid charcoal. They put me back in mental health. I stayed there for a while. Then they put me in a home, and I stayed there for a little bit. I got a job at Subway, but I didn't stay there because I was homeless. I was stealing money from Subway so I could buy some clothes, because I didn't have clothes. And so, of course, I got fired. I went to jail, back on the streets. And then I just every day I just wished I was dead. And it went back to more drugs, more partying. I didn't care what kind of drug I was putting in my body. It was I didn't care. I just didn't care. I didn't care.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I didn't experience your level of trauma whatsoever. People think my story is crazy, or hard or tough. I didn't experience anything like this. This is just blowing my mind. Where you mentioned God. You were reaching out to God, like, God, just take my life, end it. And I remember those prayers. Did you always? I mean, was that a genuine, like, knowing, hey, God, I recognize you. You're real. I know you're the God of this universe, and I want you to kill me? Or was it kind of like a last resort, like, God, if you're there, kill me?
It was, I mean, it could be both, because my grandpa was the pastor,
Yeah.
I remember the good memories of him. Like, we used to do tea time and Bible study. So there was a part of me that remembered him. And I think even though he wasn't here on earth, that he was with me through it all.
Yeah.
Because after grandpa died, the whole family went to crap. I mean, even when I went to the foster home after my stepmom had beat me, my family took her 2 kids because she was married to my dad, and I was the reminder of the affair, the reminder of the trafficking. I mean, I was like literally the dirt. I still am the dirt. And
No, you're not.
I mean, that's how they see me, and that's how I was defined like my whole life. So, and that's kind of where I chose all these really bad relationships. I was so thirsty for relationships. I didn't care what I got myself
Any
into.
kind of love.
Anything. And that's how I got married at 19. And
all this happened before 19.
Yes.
Like, I'm waiting for, like, I'm in my 30s now, and like I had this. You're still at 19.
I'm still at 19.
How old are you now?
41, going on 42.
I turned 41 tomorrow.
Happy birthday.
I mean, I'm exhausted. I mean, no, I'm like,
this is my life.
I'm sitting here saying that I'm exhausted, and I'm not trying to make light of what's going on, but like, I'm worn out. Like, my soul, I don't know about you guys watching right now, but my soul hurts.
My soul is
Oh God.
Exhausted. I mean,
I'm
like, I want my promised land like really soon here, Lord. Like, come on, like, do it.
No, I think we're gonna see it. I think we're gonna get it. Okay. So at what point, like, where is the, because I mean, look, this is heavy. This is there. I know there's more to the story.
Right.
But what was the sequence of events that led to Jesus?
It was actually after all those abusive relationships. I gave up 2 sons for adoption. I have I have 1 son living with me. He's 13. But what ended up, it was after I almost, like, literally, I really felt myself like die. Like, the ambulance was there. I don't even know. I don't remember anything. I remember another overdose, and somehow I made it. And I knew something. I just knew something had to change. And then that's when I started getting back into my Bible. I found a Bible, and then I just started reading it. And I started praying, and then I started going to church. And
what were you reading in the Bible?
I started with, like, Luke and John, because Genesis, that will. You don't start with Genesis, people.
So and then those of you who've seen my testimony, I talk about, I mean, there's a few different versions of it now, but I talk about getting the Bible in jail because that's all they would give me, that little tiny Gideon Bible.
Oh, yeah.
And I started with Genesis, and then I went to Genesis, and then I went to Revelation. Those are like the 2 worst things to read in jail or anytime. Yeah. But it was John, reading John, that made me go, oh, this Jesus guy is real. Yeah. Holy jeez.
He's not hateful, and I'm not going to hell for everything.
Yeah.
Because that's what I mean, the Christian school I went to, it was like, when I got divorced from my ex-husband, he tried killing me and my son. And so my stepmom's side of the family at my dad's funeral continued to tell me that I was going to hell because I divorced my husband, who tried taking both our lives. I mean, he put my son's head underwater. I had to watch him do that. And he followed us to the shelter. I had to get him out of the shelter. I had to find somewhere else for us to go. So then that's when I'm like, I didn't have parents growing up. This is not the life I want for my son. Yeah. So at age 3, I gave him up for adoption. And that's when I started, like, numbing myself completely. I was just so, yeah. And then of course more promiscuity and all that good stuff. So there was like a stage in my life where it was kind of a blur, because that's what it was, literally a blur, because I tried to forget every day. I just got drunk and high. I would be promiscuous. I would be out at the bars. I didn't want to wake up. Everybody's like, oh, you're so fun. I was like the dancing queen on the floor, because cheerleading, yeah, you learn, coordination skills.
I was a cheerleader too.
So.
And I try to numb myself really bad.
Yeah.
But I know that feeling, and it's never enough. I think I talked about this last night, that when you have that void and you've been hurt and you've been abused, and those of you that are watching right now, you can relate to this. You can't do enough drugs. You can't have enough sex. You can't have enough donuts, in my case. I mean, because that was everything for me. I'm just like, give me. And nothing could fill the void.
Right.
Nothing.
No.
So you're reading Luke, you're reading Mark. When did it shift? Like, when did you start to go, wow, Jesus really loves me? Jesus. And at what point did you understand that Jesus could use all of the hurt and the pain that you went through for good?
Well, when I first literally found Jesus, I actually just was watching Pastor Londa this morning. I used to go to Celebration in Lakeville, and I'd always be the girl in the back row sitting by myself in the dark. And then she kept seeing me move forward, and she's like, you come up here right now. And then she prophesied over me that ministry was in over my life. There's a call of God over my life. And that was I was going from back row girl to straight to front row, praise and worship. I don't know. And then I got baptized with the Holy Spirit a week later. And I was the first time I got baptized, I was starting to pray. I was like, oh my gosh, this is creepy, because I'm straight down small town Lutheran. That does not happen in a small town Lutheran church. So it kind of creeped me out for a little bit.
You're saying prayer language. Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't happen in a Lutheran church. Can you imagine if somebody broke out in a Lutheran or even a Catholic church and just starts prophesying over people and praying in tongues? Freaking, the Pope's head would explode. Oh my God. Anyway.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So that is actually how I gained a relationship with him, because the more you're speaking in your heavenly language, the more he's getting all that dross off you. So I just kept going and going, and I kept reading my Bible. I was still in an abusive relationship. He was making fun of me for being in my Bible, but I didn't care. That's my current son's dad. And then so after that was when I started seeing my worth, my value. And then so when my son was 1, I finally you know what? I don't deserve this. He was emotionally, I literally had a restraining order on him as of a year ago. And he continues, as of even this year, to tell me, because when we were together, I told him my story. And he's like, your mom, your dad didn't want you. Devin would be better off without you, my son, Devin. And he's like, do the world a favor and die. And actually, that's how I ended up going to the women's shelter, because he literally, when Devin was 1, handed me a bottle of pills. He continued to belittle me, and he's like,
this is after Jesus too.
This is after Jesus.
Okay, I need to interrupt you really, really quick. So audience, listen. This is when I talk about the journey with Christ and how you're not going to have everything figured out at one time. It's not, you don't give your life to Christ and then everything's fixed. Yes, there's a spiritual high and you're floating and it feels like you have butterfly wings. For some people have a week, 2 weeks. Some people get a month if you're so lucky. It's a freaking journey. It's a process. Those of you especially that are watching right now that have given your life to Christ, and you know that the devil still taunts you with the crap of your past. Maybe you gave your life to Christ and you were in an abusive relationship still. I relate to that because I was in one too. So you have to understand that you're not alone. And you don't need to beat yourself up. You don't need to go, well, God doesn't love me, or I'm not doing this right. Just stay committed, stay pursuing, stay seeking. Anyway, I'm not so happy that that this has been your experience or was your experience, but I'm also happy because I am happy in the way so that other people can hear it and understand that it's a journey, it's a process, it's a daily thing.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. Sorry.
But it pushed me to the edge where he handed me the bottle of pills, and I took those bottle of pills because I believed that my son would be better off without me, because he used what I told him against me every day. Just die. Your mom and dad didn't want you. Your family doesn't want you. Every day for 3 years, I heard it. But I mean, still, after we went to the shelter, but Devin was only starting to be a year old, and every day, even after I had him, I heard that every day. And so I finally reached a breaking point. He handed me the pills. I took them. I went to the bathroom. I cried. I took them, and I had to get admitted to the hospital. The lady's like, honey, we have women like you in here all the time. I was so used to physical abuse that I didn't know what emotional abuse was. I thought that was like norm. So I was like, so she directed me to a women's center in Hutch here in Minnesota. And so I went there, and they directed me to a shelter. So I literally packed Devin's whole room in the car, and I left. And Devin was kind of scared, so I ended up going back the same night. And the lady's like, and of course, Nick proved to me that why I left. So I cried and called the shelter back. She's like, honey, we already knew you were coming back. So I got everything of comfort for Devin, because I saw that confused look on my son's face. He was only 1. He's like, what is going on? So I packed a few more things of his, and we went back in the car. We stayed at the shelter. And that's when I found out who I was. My faith walk just bloomed, it bursted. I mean, there's always going to be warfare, but that's when I got really super close to God. I mean, I was still in my flesh, because there were a few relationships that I got into because I was so thirsty for love. I mean, but I wasn't filled all the way with him. And that leads to really weird relationships.
Yeah.
You just settle, and it's not okay. And it took the pushing of Devin's dad. Even this year. I mean, I was supposed to go to a Veda this last year. I had to get a restraining order against him. I was going to college before we went to the shelter. That got stopped. I had to get a restraining order. That got stopped. And I took a break, and Aveda was very understanding of that. So when I tried going back to school before Corona, they're like, we're sorry, you had to take a break, and our policies are this. And so they let me have an option, you can have this schedule, but it's going to be Mondays or Wednesday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Those are the days I have my son. So I asked his father if he could switch days with me, Monday and Tuesday, then I could do every other weekend, because that's what the school schedule is. He's like, no. So I prayed about it. I'm like, okay, Lord, whatever. And then so I just dropped the Veda, I dropped my dream, and it kind of pushed me. I mean, like I said, your pain can push you, because as I was going, I was having dinner with my friend Sue at the Mall of America, and I just had got back from a trafficking convention. We were talking about a Veda, but right in front of us, right after I was at a trafficking convention, there was a girl in stilettos. I mean, I wear stilettos, but she was shortened the skirt, and there was a guy.
Me too.
Not today. I call him my devil stomp, and I'm stabbing him each time I step. I either got my boots or stilettos on. But I just saw her, and my heart broke, because I knew exactly what was going on. Because actually, Mall of America is one of the biggest platforms for trafficking, because the airport's right there.
It is?
The hotels are right
That's
there.
not a good advertisement for this hotel.
No, not this hotel. The ones right, I mean, because people fly in, they go, they wine and dine their girl, and I mean, that's where they meet. And then they're busing there's busing system where they can get the girl, get her to Arizona, because they get them down to Arizona where the trafficking hits the most, in Florida, like Super Bowls. But that was like my pushing point. You know, I wrote a chapter, and I called the chapter Push to the Front Lines, because I had enough of injustice towards myself. And then it pushed me to the point where I want to be so bold as to, so I applied into law enforcement, and I'm waiting on my approval for that. I'm like, no, I want to go on the front lines. I want to be bold, and I'm going to fight for these girls. I want to fight for the girls that nobody fought for me. I was on the streets crying by myself. Nobody told me it was okay. Nobody said your worth is more than this. I mean, I want to fight. So like, that's what pushed me. Like I always say, you know, the pain pushes you, but if you have the determination to, you know, use that pain for something better and see, you know, yourself in this, I mean.
So I want to ask you something, because you started hair school. That didn't work out.
No.
I heard you say that God wants you in ministry.
Yeah.
And then now you're talking about wanting to go into the police force. What if I was to tell you that the police were part of the problem with trafficking?
I didn't know.
The government's part of the problem with trafficking. What if I was to tell you that? What if I was to tell you that as a ministry, and again, ministry is different than it's ever been.
Right.
What if I was to tell you that it was a ministry that you were going to start,
Right.
that was going to allow you to fight, and fight with gloves off, bare knuckle, whip the devils?
Yeah. That's what I'll do.
Because you won't have the restrictions.
Right.
Because I can tell you right now, any of the police officers that are watching this. In fact, I know one that will watch at some point, and he will say he's been pulled off of. He was going after traffickers, and he got pulled off by his superiors. Why? Because that target led to a bigger fish, and that bigger fish was a politician.
Yeah, there's danger in going in those front lines, but I want to do it.
But what if I could tell you that you did it, you could do it, you would be more lethal as a ministry, not a cop?
That would save me lots of money on college.
Yeah, college is overrated anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry for those of you that are attorneys and well educated. I mean, if you want to be a doctor or an attorney, I get going there, but
Right.
you were born, dadgummit, for a time like this.
Right.
Like seriously, you don't survive that and come out with light in your eyes. You don't have light in your eyes after all of that if God doesn't have some superior, unstoppable, supernatural purpose for your life.
Right. Right. Yeah, I had to get my GED because, like I said, my high school was streets. That's my education, was the streets.
It's a heck of an education. There's people watching right now, I guarantee you, that would say the streets educated them too.
Yeah.
And there's some smart people. You know, my daughter is wrapped up in that world willingly. And it terrifies me because I know she's in a position now where she's making a lot of money. No one can tell her anything. And I love her. She's a beautiful girl. And I don't know how, I don't know what will happen and when she'll decide to get out of it. But unfortunately, it's going to take something really bad for her to get out of it. But she loves the money. Like she likes the things. And I have to look at myself because I wasn't there. I was wrapped up in my own issues. And, I didn't know about her till she was 3. That's not an excuse. But over the course of her life, I wasn't a father figure. And you know what? She wasn't abused that I'm aware of. But neglect is just as damaging as abuse.
Yeah.
And, and we all as human beings need love. And it's my job as a father. And then of course, when having a family is to provide that love for children. And I didn't do that. And so she sought it elsewhere and then found attention, liking the attention and needing the attention from other men. And so she willingly goes into an industry that now is, kind of seems stuck in.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying. Like there's young girls or even boys out there, because boys, this is very much part of it. If there's anyone out there that's watching or listening, that's in that industry, and if you could say anything to them, what would it be?
Fight to get out, because there's always help. You're not alone. People are willing to help no matter. I mean, you just have to use your voice and be bold enough to get out. Because I just got out and doors opened. I mean, I might have been in a shelter, but doors started opening. So, I mean, it's just taking the step of boldness and getting out and trusting God that he will align the right people on your path. Because kind of being stuck in that is like, you're basically living in fear because you don't know what's going to happen. Believe me, I know. I've lived that my whole life, and I'm still kind of there right now. But
still in fear.
Yeah, because I lost my job. I don't know what is going to happen next. So it's like I can't look at what I can't see. I have to keep trusting God. And so it's like I don't have anybody in my circle. I'm new back in the recovery circle, because part of my story too is I was in recovery. I was in church. My ex found out where I was going to church. He found out where I was going to recovery. He was talking to people. He was texting, taking pictures of people he was talking to. He was finding out where I was going to my recovery meetings. And then I just shut down. So this is like literally, I'm coming out of hiding as of like this year. So this to me is a big deal, because I'm like literally just coming out. Like this is, So God does like those Holy Spirit sneakies, like you're going to come out and you're going to step out and you don't know where you're stepping, but God does. So I say, go out, get out of there, come out in boldness, and God will direct the rest.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I just can't stop thinking about all of these things, kind of like what is perceived as being taken from you. Mm-hmm. Maybe God moving stuff out of the way for you to step into what he wants of you to do.
Right.
You have a voice, like everyone here that, I know every time I do the show and I'm reading your comments, I'm like, that's wisdom. That's wisdom.
That's from the streets. Live it. That's from life.
But it's wisdom but it's also Holy Spirit fueled wisdom.
Oh yeah.
Like you're not dropping like street slang and street knowledge. You're dropping Holy Spirit street knowledge, which to me is pretty freaking gangsta in a good way. It is. Yeah. It is. And people need to hear it, because there's people on the streets. There's former prostitutes. There's people that are still in the industry. Mm-hmm. They're trying to get out, or they're in that wrestling match of like the wrestling of surrender with God. Like, okay, like the willingness to go all in. That's a process. It takes trust. It takes faith.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: for you to take a step towards ministry, it doesn't mean when you take your first step, you got a full-blown ministry and you're speaking in front of 100,000 people and you're blah, blah, blah. You're not. It doesn't mean you're doing that. But really, your first step into ministry was, that I saw, was your comments and the wisdom that you were dropping, coming on the show to share your story about what Jesus did for you. That's a step into ministry. So what's the step tomorrow? Maybe there's another step. Maybe you can ask God what your next step is. Because here's the thing. You got ministry written all over you. Because I don't think you have other options that are going to lead you to a place of joy and fulfillment. You got to go all in serving people.
All right.
Serving people, like you serve people the wrong way, not to your choice, but now you have an opportunity to serve and bless people using this. And as you share, like what the hurt and the pain that you've done,
right,
you've now created space for healing.
Yeah.
And now you've helped other people heal. And so now you get that back, and now you got to keep doing it. And that becomes a new addiction. That becomes a new habit. And little by little, you get more and more and more healed, and stronger and stronger and stronger. I want to ask you something, and I don't care that we're going over time either, because it's Tuesday. And Misty, you're on after me, but not tonight. Hi, Misty. Good to see you. You're not on after me, I don't think. So I'm going to keep going. We're on TV. So, yeah. And we have like a live time slot, so I'm just going to keep going. because I've got a couple questions I want to ask I think are important. And then I just talked myself out of remembering what those were. Okay, wait, you are a C. Oh, I know what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I know the devil loves to taunt you.
Oh yeah, every day.
Telling you that you're not good enough, telling you not worth, repeating everything that was said to you by your mother, your stepmom, your dad, the men in your life. What do you do when you have those attacks in your mind? What do you do?
I just open my mouth, like my Bible, and declare God's truth. I like just, blast my worship music, and I just like get on the front lines and I just start warring in the spirit in my heavenly language. And I think also it's important that like when you're in that spot of healing that you stay like for me, I've been single for almost 3 years, but it took 3 years for me to finally get to know myself without anybody identifying me. It took 3 years for me to get like all that yuck rooted out of me. And so now I'm like, I'm not going to settle for just what I used to, because it's just bad. But it's just, I think it takes a long time to heal, and just because if you find yourself, then you'll find the person that compliments you, because that person's not going to fill you. God's going to fill you. So you got, before it was like, fill me, I need. And then now I'm like,